It's now time for our final speaker, and I would like to introduce Alex Monroe, who is an Environmental Opportunity Fund Investment Manager for Cenovus Energy, to introduce our next speaker. And Alex is a big supporter of not only this ICC initiative, but also our academic portfolio EPP 101 sessions. So we're really happy to have him here today.
So my company, Cenovus Energy, prides itself on being innovative. So this is not a plug. Be clear about that. But we do pride ourselves on being an innovator in sustainability. And I know that seems awkward for an oil sands company to say, except we're always looking at what's on the cutting edge. Sustainability means to us that we have to be around for a long time. So that means persistence. But like I said, it also means innovation. Persistence and innovation. And I think those are two key things that I would hope you take forward as you go through today. Because those redound directly to the longevity of both our society, but also our companies. So with that theme in mind, I'd like to introduce John Longbottom. And a little bit of background on John. He currently leads IBM's Smarter Cities Initiative. Now, I would encourage you to ask him a little bit about some of the Smarter Cities initiatives that he thinks are probably the leading initiatives, because that's a key idea for going forward and how we're going to manage the electrical grid, but also urban development and planning. Two key things, again, for our society. Previous to this role, he worked in executive positions for telecoms and utilities for the Power Financial Group of companies. He also created and implemented IBM Canada's National Aboriginal Strategy and continues to support that strategy in an advisory capacity. He's worked with IBM for 28 years, where he's developed extensive experience in sales, marketing, customer service, account management, strategy, and IT services and technology. Prior to that, he was GM and Senior Location Executive, representing IBM's overall business interests in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Northwestern Ontario. And he was also Senior Services Executive for Manitoba and Northwest Ontario, responsible for the leadership of a large IT outsourcing business. Prior to that, John held the position of Manager of Strategy and Planning within IBM's Global Industry Business Solutions in New York, where he worked on a 42-month assignment in IBM's U.S. corporate headquarters, focusing on marketing strategy, planning, business strategy, and IBM's e-business solutions businesses. I hope you get a sense that here is a man truly at the cutting edge of strategy, because IBM is still, in our perspective, one of the leading innovators for industry broadly. He was GM of Western Canada, responsible for Ceridian Canada's business interests from Victoria to Thunder Bay, and he tells me he loves Thunder Bay, but I would also note that he now lives in Vancouver. He focused on business development, operational effectiveness, strategic sales, and marketing for them. He then moved to become EVP, Sales and Marketing, where he was responsible for a gamut of groups, including market intelligence, planning, communications, operations, as well as new business development, sales, partner relationships, and account management. Recently, he was on a 3-week assignment to Guadalajara for an engagement with one of IBM's Smarter Cities Challenge winners. Launched in 2010, the Smarter Cities Challenge is a competitive grant program led by IBM Corporate Citizenship, the focus of which is to enable up to 100 cities around the world to become more vibrant and livable for their citizens. What a fantastic initiative. On a more personal note, John does now live in Vancouver, and so I would ask him about Thunder Bay. Canada with his wife, Terry, and takes time to enjoy the city and surrounding areas. He's a passionate runner, guitar player, and is working hard on golf. Please join me in welcoming one of Canada's leading, persistent innovators.
Amazing. Good morning. Boy, I'm just going to leave now because there's no way I'm going to be able to meet with that introduction. Thanks a lot. I'm really energized to be here today with you all, because you're our future. And as I look around, I'm sure you're highly intelligent, you're highly motivated, you're getting excited to either finish your school or get out there and get out in the workforce and make a real difference in our community. So I'm more pleased to have the opportunity to spend a little time with you. The introduction really says that, I did a whole bunch of stuff, probably not all that well, so I bounced from one place to another. But in the process of that, you get experience, and I've enjoyed much of it. But the role that I'm in, I've been in it for about a year and a half now, is really very exciting. It's at the front end of what IBM's trying to do to reshape the world. And I know that sounds like a very grand statement, how can IBM reshape the world? But we've contributed a lot in the past. to make a fundamental difference in the world as we know it today. Whether it was sending somebody to the moon, whether it was, for those of you that have ever had LASIK surgery, our researchers actually created the fundamental technology that was the basis for that. We created risk technology, we created a relational database, we created a lot of things that the market consumed and used to help transform itself. And we're just very excited. Part of our credo is to continue to help our world become better. So the Smarter Planet, Smarter Cities initiative and strategy at IBM is just a very exciting place to be, because at its foundation, it is all about sustainability. It's all about taking a consumption model that we have today and make it more effective, make it more efficient. So what I want to do, knowing a bit about what you're trying to accomplish, I'm happy to have heard a couple of the previous speakers, because I was just completely excited to hear this notion of systems thinking, which I believe is really fundamental. It's really about who IBM is. It's all about systems thinking. Everything that we've done, as I mentioned, there's a lot of complexity in all of the systems that have to come together when you send somebody to the moon, as an example. And our heart of our system is all about systems thinking. And you'll see that evident in the presentation today. In fact, I did have a chart. Previous second speaker to me put up a kind of systems diagram of the energy flows. And I was going to just show you an example within a city, the kinds of challenges that can occur between three departments. And it was a very complex systems diagram. But I decided not to use it. Somebody else had one, so that's great. I'm going to go through and set the stage for you to describe, first of all, what is this Smart Planet thing, why are we into it, and how that might have some relevance to your thinking, not only in the work that you're doing in school, but perhaps in this competition. And then I'll move into smarter cities, because I think that's really the nexus of where all these systems come together. And then I'll give you a few examples of what some of the leading edge nations, cities, other companies are doing to put some of this stuff into practice. So I'm going to start with the Smarter Planet. And first of all, I'm going to frame the fact that there's a lot of opportunity for improvement in our world. I'm going to give you a few factoids. First one is really about the losses of electrical power. Upwards to 50–60% of the power that's generated actually makes it to a useful purpose. So there's a huge opportunity there. If we consider the capital cost and the operational cost of managing that system, an opportunity to improve that system significantly. Another example is in traffic. In terms of congestion, it's incredible when you actually understand the implications of just traffic congestion and how much CO2 is generated and how much energy is actually wasted. And there's some statistics for you. In Canada, Metrolinx did a study about 2 years ago and determined almost 2% of GDP is lost because of congestion. And congestion is a result of a transportation network that's very complex. And actually, you're all from Calgary, which I assume you are, or you at least experience Calgary. You know full well what that is, because Calgary is one of those very large cities. As the previous speaker talked about, we had a green field, so we built out there, and then we had a green field, we built out there, and then a green field, we built out there. And before somebody stepped back and said, well, gee, did we actually really think about the transportation system, the traffic system? So you all, whether you're coming on the Deerfoot every day, when you're sitting there idling, not only are you losing your productive time, but you're wasting energy. So these are really important issues that that are telling us that we need to figure out a way how to deal with this. Here's an example now of water. And water is just a fascinating topic. We all assume it's free. You in Alberta have a particular interest in water, not only because you drink it and nourish yourself, it keeps you alive, but about 2, 3, 4 hours north of here is the heart of your sort of economic powerhouse, and it uses a substantial amount of water for its purpose, and rightfully so. It's part of the extraction process. But there are a bunch of implications with respect to the environment as well. But the point is that of all the water we have, really only 1% of it is useful in terms of consumption. And give you an appreciation for the demands on water. I mean, the population through 3 times, use of water through 6 times. Even though millions of people outside of people like us use less than 3 gallons a day. You know, the average Canadian American uses 160 gallons a day. And it really is a very scarce resource in many places. So these are fundamental issues in our world that call out for action. And, you know, and as we started to look at our company and our strategies, we believed that as part of our credo was, what can we do to affect the world? And you put that in balance, where can we make money? Because we are a corporation, and we continue to make money. And how do you develop something that's comprehensive? Our chairman and executive team came up with something called Smarter Planet. I'm just going to take you through the fundamentals of what Smarter Planet is all about. And it's basically 3 fundamental themes. One is that we continue to instrument the world that we live in. We're putting it together, connecting it together, and then fundamentally, by taking massive amounts of data, we're able to drive intelligence from that. That's the basic concept of Smart Planet, and I just want to take you through some of the more fundamental proof points of that as I build towards talking about smarter cities. So instrumented really is all about our ability now to sense things at a level that we've never been able to do before. One of the examples here is that there are over 1 billion transistors for each person. This is a little bit dated. My assumption is probably about 1.5 billion transistors for every person in the world. And they tell me that that particular statistic is there's more of that than there are grains of sand. Here, grains of sand. Think about that. So, now it's not that everybody has 1 billion transistors stuck on them. You know, it's all used for useful purposes, building equipment, building technology, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the point. There are over 30 billion RFID tags. RFID tags are small, very small transmitters that you can, in fact, code information inside of, and then communicate that information, whether you're moving a pallet through Walmart, or in some cases you're managing the status of a cow. And you think, well, how might that work? Well, if you have a big, a large contingent of cows that you're managing, you can actually embed a sensor that looks at the chemical constitution of the cow at any time to find out if there's any illness, any stress, pregnancy, etc. And how that helps to improve the overall supply chain of sort of the agricultural concept here. But everything's going to become instrumented, whether we talk about supply chains, how you manage your healthcare networks, etc. So we're getting information from, many, many places. As an example, 85% of new automobiles, as you can see here, have event recorders built in them. And it's amazing how much technology there is in a car. In fact, there's more dollars spent on the technology in a car than there is actually the steel and the plastic that goes into the car. And these cars are becoming very intelligent. You watch the commercials now, they park themselves, etc. You'll eventually see the car as a node, within a very large interconnected world. Cell phones, as an example. Cell phone has in the neighborhood of 100 sensors built into it. And in fact, I think there are about 6 billion, I think it's about 4 billion cell phones today. By 2020, the forecast is there'll be 10 billion cell phones. So you just think of the massive amount of information that we're collecting at the fundamental sensorization level. So the next thing is that this stuff is getting connected together. Whether you're talking about the internet, there's this notion of something called the Internet of Things. So that's not just you on the internet, it's your refrigerators on the internet. Your washer and dryer's connected to the internet. A bunch of machines that really don't need human interaction but need tending to every once in a while is on the internet. And that particular number is heading quite dramatically, exponentially, up to 1 trillion devices being connected together. So here it is, 6 billion mobile phones that we had in 2011. Then, of course, almost 1/3 of the population is on the internet because we, in fact, people, are sensors as well. You enter data, your patterns are tracked through Facebook, etc. So bottom line, you're a sensor as well. So I want to give you a sense for the fact that there's this massive amount of collection happening. It's being connected together. And as I say, and the kinds of networks that are connecting this together, this is the Internet of Things. It's called machine-to-machine interface, where a host computer will actually manage a broad number of devices automatically. In many cases over the Internet. Of course, we've got our energy grid is being interconnected together, whether it be a network across Canada or around the world, so that issues like blackouts that occurred a few years ago in Toronto, which I experienced personally on the 14th floor of the hotel that I had to stay in for 3.5 days, cooking with fire in the backyard of the hotel, just to get appreciation. And then we have a number of new technologies that are coming out. Zigbee is a protocol that connects to smart meters. And then, of course, Bluetooth. And you all are very familiar with Bluetooth, whether you're using your headset, whether you're attaching in your car. But we have some partners that are using Bluetooth technology to count cars going past a certain area. And it's going to, that network will help us to better manage transportation in the future. So, appreciation of this notion of interconnectedness. Then lastly, there's this concept of intelligent. And the amount of data that's being created is phenomenal. We're talking petabytes, exabytes. I mean, they're coming up with various other prefixes that when I went to school weren't even comprehensible. I mean, if you're talking peta level, that was huge. Now you start talking exa level, and the amount of information that's generated every day, which is absolutely massive. But that's an opportunity. So here's an example. 15 petabytes of, I believe that's 1,000 gigabytes, and a gigabyte is 1,000 megabytes. I mean, that is a lot of information. But 8 times more than the information all U.S. libraries every day. And by the way, this stuff is expensive to manage. Not so much in the technology per se, but how you manage it. So we need new computing models. The real cool thing is that our technology has improved to the point where the price to store, the price to manage this information has gone down dramatically. The computing power has gone up significantly. So what you used to be able to buy 20 years ago for $200,000, you can buy today for $50. And that Moore's law has been continued to increase over time. So on one hand, we've got this massive amount of information that's being generated. Data actually is being generated. We're connecting it together. And on the other hand, we've got new technologies that we can afford. So we can store it, we can process it. And now we're into this new realm of what we'll call big data science. So computer science really, in the future, will be all about data. How do I get smart about how I find patterns in data? How do I build mathematical models that will help me interrogate data? Whether it be to look historically at what happened, or to make decisions on the fly, which we call streaming decisions. And this notion over here, what we call big data, is really just to say that, the amount of data, you'll notice the kilo, mega, giga, tera, peta, exa, it is phenomenal, just the amount of data at rest that we have that are sitting in our data warehouses. People in the oil and gas industry would understand this from the seismology and people in water from hydrology. It's an amazing amount of information that's stored centrally. But what's happening is there's a lot of data being developed on the fly in massive amounts. And we need strategies to be able to analyze that data on the fly so we can make decisions on the fly. Here's some examples of the amount of information within an industry context, whether it be homeland security. 600,000 records per second are generated. You need 1 to 2 milliseconds per decision. Deep analytics, etc. So this big data scenario is really about the opportunity to take all of that data that's been brought together, integrated, stored, or dealt with on a ad hoc basis. So, Smarter Planet is all about the interconnection between the digital domain and the physical domain, i.e. sensorization of all the things that make up our systems in the world today, and how we leverage information technology to create a feedback loop that either we can deal with data that's been stored, and we can look at trends and analysis, or what can we do to make decisions on the fly using new technology, new techniques, and the new capabilities that weren't there, 5 years ago. So that's just the fundamentals of smart planning. So it's a way to think about all the systems that exist around the world in new and creative ways. It's all about instrumented, interconnected, and intelligent. So let me just move into the smarter city. So why are we interested in the smarter city? The smarter city is really where all of the systems that we deal with around the world, most of them, come together. And they come together in front of the citizens that engage, live, work, and play. And what's really interesting is that as of last year, 50% of the world's population lived in urban environments. And by 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in urban environments. So there's an extreme trend, migration towards the city structure. And that's why we believe that taking the smart planet idea, the best place to apply those principles and concepts, if you're really going to get a big benefit for our world, our population, our citizens, is really to focus on the city. But there are some challenges in the city. Our infrastructures are aging. When I was down in Guadalajara, a city that's been around for 550 years. It's amazing when you start to see that some of the infrastructure that's in the ground that supports your water, as an example, may have been in there for 150 or 200 years. Some of it's made out of wood. So if you take a look at water as one of the domain examples, a city can lose up to 50%, just as I talked about the electrical grid. Well, in the water system, cities can lose upwards to 50% of their water through leakage. I mean, the point is that no water is ever destroyed or created. What we got is what we have. It just keeps transforming itself. But in an environment where we're trying to manage that system in a micro level, we're losing a lot of water in our cities. Transport, I gave you some examples of that. One of the examples was in China. You talk about gridlock, you talk about being in traffic congestion. How about being in a traffic problem for 10 days? And in fact, I saw a recent article that somebody trumped them. I'm not sure if it could have been India, or Mexico City. It was like 15 days. This is a traffic jam, 15 days. And then, of course, the blackout in the U.S., which I spoke about earlier. I think I was about there when it happened. The energy system at this moment is quite inefficient. So there's a great opportunity in our cities to make a fundamental difference. And we are becoming more sophisticated in how we look at cities and where we're spending our time. I mean, 100 years ago, it was really about security, so we focused on walls and roads to make them secure. Then it was about convenience, so we made sure they got access to water and energy. Now it's about opportunity. We focused on jobs and education. And really, we're up and around here in terms of prosperity, and some of the issues are lifestyle and culture. So our point here is that the 21st century is all about essential cities. So that's why the IBM company is focused maniacally around smarter cities. And how do we help the urban planners? How do we help the people that run and manage cities? How do we help the politicians manage that ecosystem in a way that drives more efficiency and more effectiveness? It's a tough job. It's a tough job to manage a city environment. You can see from a positive perspective, I need strategies for innovation. How do I get investment into my city? How do I develop a more cohesive community? And of course, how do I do this in a sustainable way? And how do I balance that against, as I mentioned, the aging infrastructure? We don't have as much money as we used to have. Very difficult. Tax bases have gone down, particularly with the economic crisis an issue. We have a changing population, a lot of dynamic around immigration, etc. And then, of course, you all are very familiar with the kinds of issues we've had to deal with in the last 15 years or so with respect to security and terrorism and those types of things. That is a fine line to balance all of those particular, we call them sort of the harsh realities of opportunity and reality. So, smarter cities, we call them a complex system of systems. Within a city, you got administration, public safety, education, social services, energy, transportation, etc. And in many cases, they don't necessarily work together, but they exist together. And our emphasis at IBM is really about how do we make each of these, we call them domains, more efficient, more effective. And at the same time, how do you build a strategy for the city leaders to really create an integrated platform across all of those constituencies to make my city, to drive my city to whatever outcome or end goal we believe is important for the city, whether that's to be the most greenest city in the world, the one with the greatest education potential, etc. So, technology. So, it's really about, at the end of the day, turning information into insight. I spoke about the instrumented, interconnected, intelligent. What that's really about is taking massive amounts of data, turning it into information, and then using advanced analytics to drive new insight. Insight that you could never derive before. Second major theme is really about how to integrate those systems to deliver better outcomes. So if a flood occurs and it hits an energy producing piece of equipment and the power goes out, and that affects the traffic lights for a moment, that creates a traffic situation that starts a congestion, getting help, ambulance and safety crews there. You can think about that as a very complex system in itself. And then when you think about the resources that get applied, just in that simple scenario I gave you, and put dollar signs against that, it's an enormous amount of economic potential, opportunity, or in an increasing amount of cost that has to be absorbed within the city budgets, etc. So really it's all about leveraging this information to drive insight. And what we can do, a point here is a little bit of a statement that we've been in about 2,000 projects with cities in all various forms. We certainly see a lot of patterns and best practices. But it's really about how do I take that information and make better decisions than I could before, because I can mine that data and I can drive an insight that I never would have been able to through time or through people, through energy, been able to make before. In many cases, cities have an enormous amount of resources at their disposal, whether it be public works, whether it be public safety, government services, example. And how do you use that information then to coordinate your resources to operate more effectively? How do I get more with less? And then, even more exciting is that how do I use this data and use what we call predictive analytics to find out, I use the Wayne Gretzky approach, where's the puck going to be versus where it is today. So an example might be, as opposed to waiting for a water main to burst, and then, cordon off the area, get my work crews established in there, dig it up, fix it. Are there strategies to be able to actually model the system and determine what are the top 10 most potential areas that may fail, and go spend my time mitigating the situation before it fails, so I don't end up with that catastrophic event. And just in that scenario there, you can get a 50, 60, 70% improvement in your cost structures just by using data in a more strategic way. Now, before I give you a few examples, I wanted to just try to set the tone of what's Smarter Planet about? How does that impact a city? And I would hope that in your thinking, you've got a lot of background, you've got your own experiences, you've got your own knowledge. But think about technology, think about what we can do to actually make these cities far more efficient and effective, and what we might do if we could do that to help the rural areas, or help emerging countries or emerging areas, and just sort of think about that. So just to do that, I'm going to give you a few examples. City of Dubuque. we've basically got what we call a smarter city living laboratory. They're a city of about 60,000 citizens, and frankly, about 40% of the cities or the urban environments that people are migrating to are what we would call the smaller cities. They're less than 200,000. So Dubuque is really a nice size for us because it allows us to use them as a living laboratory. What they're doing is they've actually taken technology and applied it to their water and energy distribution systems. And they provided portals to the citizens. So I think there was a mention of, I think that the previous speaker said, do you know what you pay per kilowatt hour in the afternoon? And I think it was kind of rhetorically that, you probably don't care. Well, you should care. And in fact, what we're doing in Dubuque, what Dubuque is doing, they've actually developed a sustainable city by virtue of having these portals. And they've done some interesting things. They've taken 150 people as what I'll call the control group. And they've taken another 150 people that, very similar characteristics, and they gave them some tools. They gave them some portals. I'll give you an example. Here's an energy portal. Simple. Everybody's on the internet. Between doing Facebook, why don't we take a look at my energy portal? And interestingly enough, they've got some statistics on it. So it tells you, by the way, last month your phantom power was 20% of your energy bill. Absolutely wasted energy. Average power, by the way, in your neighborhood was 15%, so you're kind of above the normal. What the heck are you doing? And amazingly enough, by having this as a portal, and an example here, a water portal, people start to think differently. And of that 150 people that were in the technology group, they actually decreased their water usage by 10%. And they increased their energy usage by 15%. So multiply that across the hundreds of thousands or millions or billions of people in the world that utilize and absorb this very critical set of resources, and think about the impact we could make by making all of this smarter. Here's an example of Malta. So Malta's got, it's a nation, nation island, nation state, and about 400,000 people live there. Much of its water is driven through desalination plants, which are driven by energy plants, which are fueled by oil and gas. The water level is increasing. It's affecting their groundwater. So they have a real urgent problem to deal with. And what they're doing is making their nation smarter by integrating the water and energy systems, and providing their population with the tools and capabilities through interactive meters, and they will reward customers who consume less energy and water. So in this particular case, it's just not a matter of providing you with information. I actually give you a payoff at the end of the day. Why? Because it's so critical that they get a handle on this, or it could be disaster for this particular nation state. So it's giving an appreciation of using information. And this is not like sending somebody to Mars. This is just really the tools, the technologies exist today. It's really about the conviction and the disciplines to be able to utilize these tools to solve problems in new and different ways. Here's an example of Pacific Northwest National Labs, where this is just a simple smart grid implementation. Actually ran, again, portals. We provided information to users of the electrical system. We actually tried some new technologies, washers and dryers, etc., that would actually bid for a time to be used based on the current price per kilowatt hour. So at 3 in the morning, your dryer would say, "Hey, I can go on for 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour, so I'm going to get started now." And what they were able to do is they were able to cut their peak load by 15% in this particular experiment. That's peak load of 15%. If you think about, depending on the size of the generation, how much capital has to go in to develop a peak load. We're talking enormous amounts of money. And that money can be rechanneled. And then lastly, I want to give you an appreciation for smarter buildings. This particular campus is an IBM facility. Sort of tell a bit of story out of school. Much of how we got to the smarter planet, smarter cities thing came through our need to make our resources more effective. We make a lot of, we fabricate a lot of technology. We build a lot of equipment. And consequently, we've got massive campuses, massive buildings, massive manufacturing plants. And it's really through there that we got smart about the fact that we were wasting resources. We could impact our balance sheets and our income statements. Plus, we could actually build a better product at the end of the day, do it far more effectively. This is an example of a smart building. As you can see, pretty complex, but I want to give you appreciation. This is IBM Burlington, not far from the Canadian border. We build technology wafers and silicon substrates, etc. But over the period of time, 2001, we reduced fuel usage by about 30%, electricity 18%, but we generated 40% more. And this is just one example of a cluster of buildings. So, I want to sort of impart upon you this thinking that technology can play a critical role in how you develop your strategies and how our business develop their strategies, how our cities develop their strategies. And we'd love to have that thinking pervade some of your, and as you take a look at your case and cases and the project that you're involved in. There's a tremendous amount of potential, whether you're looking at energy, you're looking at water, you're looking at buildings, to be able to use those techniques, use them effectively, generate more cost savings, and implement more opportunity for growth than ever before. So I think am I on time, Lauren?
Yeah, you have time for questions.
Do I have time for questions?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
great. So any questions? There was a big flat. Yes, please.
Does funding for the programs originate from municipalities, or is it federally funded, like in order to create a city?
Are you talking about the funding that we spoke about, the Smarter City Challenge, or the Smarter City Challenge? And so we're kind of putting our money where our mouth is here. Is that we believe that we've got to kickstart a number of these cities off on a Smarter Cities journey. So we put aside $100 million. And or $50 million, and we're going to do 100 cities over a period of 3 years. When I say do 100 cities, we take a half a dozen to 8 senior skilled IBMers, whether for research or for consulting, etc. We put them into a city, working with the city leadership for a period of 3 weeks, come up with a set of recommendations. And we do it as a bid process. So we ask cities from all over the world, around the world, cities, municipalities, etc., put in an application. We'll look at it. If we think it's got a great opportunity to do something that other cities can learn from, does it fit with our smart city strategy? Does it employ technology to take data, turn it into information, drive insight? And then we will decide that we'll work with that city. Guadalajara was an example. We worked with Glasgow. We worked with Ho Chi Minh City, and last year we did 24 cities. This year we'll do 35, and then we've got one more year. But it's basically IBM money, and this year we've got 4 Canadian cities that have applied. Yep.
Are any of those cities in Alberta?
Actually, one of the cities that has applied this year is in Alberta. The city that won last year was in Alberta, which was Edmonton. And their issue was traffic, so it's not really anything to do with energy, but it was about traffic. And they had a problem of fatalities, collisions, more than they would consider appropriate. At the same time, they had about 15 years worth of data that they didn't know what to do with. So it was a perfect, perfect scenario. And if you want to look at the results of that effort, I'll give you a URL. Just go and Google IBM Smarter City Challenge, and you'll get to a site that's called thesmartercity.org. And in there, you'll see all of the cities that applied, all the cities that we've worked with. There's reports in there of, and there's testimonials, and you'll see the Edmonton scenario in there. So I can't tell you which one from Alberta applied. In fact, I probably shouldn't have told you before. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
There is a belief that having higher energy efficiency yields to higher rather than lower energy use. So
I'm sorry,
it seems like having higher energy efficiency yields to a higher energy use. So having energy efficiency by itself is not enough, that there's also needs to be deterrence of consumption and consumer behavior.
Absolutely, and that's where the, you take an example of the Dubuque. It's really, you know, on one hand, you want to become more efficient. You want to do more with less, and that might mean maybe that you bring your costs down and it's cheaper for you to use energy. But what's really important is how are you using it, and how are you using it more efficiently. And I think the portals, as an example, you know, will show you that, you know, if I, just by becoming more aware through a portal simply, I'm going to use 15 to 20% less water than I used to, or 15% less energy than I used to. You kind of get, I think, kind of a double payment. So I don't think it's necessarily, but I don't know if I answered that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if people have more control over the energy that they use, then there would be more positive outcomes.
Mm-hmm. And today, the speaker before us was great because he used both the water example and the electricity example. You know, of watching the meter go around. And by the way, in many cases, it's not something that spins anymore. It's actually a smart meter, which bringing up a whole set of other issues. Or he used the example of watching the dryer or the washer go around. But because we have no insight into it, you know, on a daily basis, we have no metrics, we have no benchmark, and it's easy to do that because there's a huge amount of data available today. We just aren't exploiting it. But we can do both. Make the environment more efficient, to generate, make more money, maybe make it cheaper. At the end of the day, though, it's all about using it more effectively and efficiently. Sorry.
You spoke of big data generation to drive new insight, which I agree is a crucial exercise in human development. I just want to kind of get an idea of certain costs associated with big data generation. For example, data centers and warehouses, surely they're very energy intensive, just because of their size, and I guess various cooling needs and whatever else. So I was wondering, maybe you could provide an example and give us an idea within the information systems industry. You could explain the relationship or trend between big data generation and associated GHGs, maybe in the USA.
There is, without having a lot of statistics on it, I'll give you one. I think it's 10% of the energy that's produced is used by technology, data centers, something like that. It's a big user, and you know what that's all about. It's not only powering the technology to make it work, it's all about flowing electrons and making things happen. I think it's very hot, and when it gets very hot, I've got to cool it, and that takes energy. So you got this really interesting conundrum. But I would say that there's probably been more work done to make data centers more efficient than there probably has to make any of the other systems more efficient. Why? Well, because it's a pattern that we can actually, it's a very consistent pattern that we can actually replicate. And people make a lot of money from coming up with new ideas and approaches to it. And it's everything from, we created technologies of thermal blankets to put on the back of servers that sort of take the heat, turn it into some other form of energy into the thermal blanket. So you're basically getting a closed loop system on that using geothermal techniques. I saw an example of a server farm in Canada where they took one of the old nuclear bunkers and actually using some of the natural surroundings to be able to absorb some of that heat so they don't have to, in fact, use techniques to cool it. But I can't give you an example of some specific stats. All I can tell you is that there's plenty of effort going on to, how do I make that far more efficient? It's really a tough problem. When you think 10% of the energy consumed by those farms, and it's a great point. At some point it becomes a balance between having all this technology to get all this information to drive insight to fix my other systems. At the same time, I've got to make sure that I'm making that far more efficient. But it's a great observation. Now, I don't think I really answered your question, but it is something that to be noted. Any other? Yes, sir.
Information systems is often seen as a cost center for most businesses and cities. So how soon do you make it worth it? Is it simple that you go through now with analytics?
I think business cases are there. It's not necessarily the cost structures at all. I think it's really the conviction. I think it's the fact that a lot of our information technology departments spend 80% of the time keeping what's in place going. So they have a hard time transforming. This is really about transformation. So the business cases are there. Whether you're talking water, energy, public safety, some of these, get down to a balance of public safety versus cost, right? But I can make more efficient. For example, public safety technologies to be able to mine data to reduce crime by 15, 20, 30%. Whether you're talking the city of Richmond in the U.S., you're talking New York City, you're talking Edmonton, you're talking Vancouver, they're using huge data mining techniques. So there's business cases there, and it's just really a matter of getting a conviction. So I don't spend a lot of my time talking to, and I'm not yet beat up for this, but I don't spend a lot of my time talking to the IT leadership because I know they're busy. I know they got too many opportunities to say no. I spend my time with mayors, councilors, department heads, those people that are running the systems that can be improved. But there are no major obstacles. The timing is now, the opportunity is now, the business cases are there. It's slam dunk. Really. But just mindset. That answer? Yep. Any other questions? Yep.
Okay, so we have this huge capability to capture and store and analyze data with all this software and all this technology. How do we protect an individual's identity? How do we protect their individuality? And how do we protect their privacy?
Absolutely. Those are key issues, and that's why a majority of spending going on in the IT industry today is around security to do exactly that. The example I used of, let's say, Vancouver, Toronto, Toronto is one example as well, New York City, is that the techniques that are used in doing this data mining and analysis, they actually anomalize the data. So there's actually mechanisms that they use to strip out any identification. It's a little different if you're chasing after bad guys. So if you've got rap sheets and those sorts of things, some of that's okay. But in terms of basic privacy and security, that is a fundamental concern, and lots of money and techniques and tools are applied to it. So without a doubt, fully agree with you. And there are mitigations in place for that. In fact, there have to be. We wouldn't be selling those kinds of technologies if we're able to prove that we can keep it secure and to respect the privacy of citizens and people in the database. But we can actually just look for trends just by anomalizing it. Take all the names and just look at the situations that occur. There's enough insight that's derived out of that without having to do specific things. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, do you see smart grid technology and distributed generation right to the end user? Do you see those as being core technologies in how we manage the grid going forward, or are they sort of nice to haves?
No, I think the trend, particularly in this province, and I would say Ontario too, this local generation is really a fascinating concept, and I believe will become more and more part of the overall grid itself in the future. In fact, we're doing some work in Ontario to plan for that, to build the systems, to be able to accept. So if I build my own generation and I use it for my consumption, I might have excess. Well, I want to sell that into the grid. So you need the systems to be able to deal with that, to be able to transact that, to be able to account for that. And we're doing that, in fact, in Ontario for Toronto Hydro, or Ontario Hydro. So I think that's something that's part of the future and will be fundamental to the future. In fact, I had a NMAX here in Calgary. Previous CEO was very insightful, great executive, and he was a big advocate of this local generation. And he had in his house, he had a couple of what they call whisper jets. And whisper jets was what's called a Stirling engine. If you want to just Google a Stirling engine, I think it was developed in 1880, and it was kind of your perpetual motion machine kind of idea with a spinning wheel. And it would basically take thermal energy and spin the wheel to actually generate electricity. And it got fabricated to the point where you could actually commercialize it to some degree and take the excess energy that was coming off your hot water heaters, for example, and turn that into useful power. So whether it's putting, solar panels on the roof or whisper jets in the basement, what have you, I think that's going to be just part and parcel of the network going forward, which is going to make it more complex, but at the same time make it more reliable and make it more efficient. Any other questions? Lauren, I think I'm going over time here. No? Hey, I want to thank you very much for an opportunity just to come and yap at you. As I say, I get really excited about being with folks like you because you're thinking a lot about the future. You're going to actually control the future. I wish you luck in the competition, those of you that are on it, and just thank you for listening a little bit. So have a great day.
I'm just going to do a